had to trade. The Rook was actually trapped in place. Magnus Carlsen strikes back. He wins the first game of 3+1. That is huge for his chances.
That is just what the doctor ordered. I'll just contribute to what you just said by mentioning that when the Rook moved away from e5, the knight on f6 became pinned. You couldn't use it for counterplay, and black was out of resources. And very interesting development here. They are repeating the opening from game 1 of the match. Who is going to deviate first? Or is Hikaru just saying, hey, I'm more than happy with a draw?
Kind of an interesting decision, I think.
Wow. Look at this.
Great one.
Look at that. Black was the one pushing here, wasn't he?
Hikaru must have looked at it, right?
He must have looked at it, but is this really what he wants to do? To get a position where, Magnus seems to be the one drawing from a position of strength. I guess Hikaru has looked at it to the point where he feels super confident that he can deprive black of any remaining chances.
Bishop c2. That allowed knight d4 check when king g3 was there, and that's when Magnus played g5. But bishop takes h7 was a possibility.
And it is again. It's just a blunder. Knight e2 check, I guess, is his point, but then you go king f3, and white's better in that endgame because at the end of the line, Robert, you're going to go rook d6 and hit the pawn. Magnus looks puzzled. What's he doing?
I don't really know, because when you play something, you expect your opponent to look at it. So I think Magnus could have spent a little bit more time before venturing into the same exact variation. Now, it's only one pawn. And I say only, not because it's not a big deal, but because in many rook endgames, being just one pawn down still gives great chances to draw. So I do think that this game is much closer to equal than any sort of advantage for white. I just am a bit confused by this whole repetition of the game.
And this was unnecessary, right? You didn't have to do this to yourself. And now Magnus is on the defensive, but handily drawing with that knight being as active as it is. game around and actually win it.
So should he go rook c8 here? Just try to push that on.
Rook b8, I guess he could go back to e4. He's counter-attacking the knight.
Yeah, that's just equal. So this rook e4 idea is frustrating for black to deal with.
Can't play c3. There are no forks. The king is very well placed on g2. It's out of the checking zone of the black knight. Rook c8, your call.
And if knight b5, there might be rook f3 check, and then a4. But now if rook f3, there's knight f4 check. So you just block the check with another check, and then push the pawn.
But now can you check and play c3? Lose that pawn, because white's king can suddenly make a mad dash toward the queen side.
Black is definitely better here. This is uncomfortable to play with 47 seconds.
Yeah. Hikaru trying to whip up some counterplay with his own passer, distracting black from the c8 square, but the king can move into d4. Oh, and then there's h4, undermining the knight. Watch out for that tactic.
Although c3 is so tempting right here to bring the knight back around. He goes, watch out for knight e1, that's a fork.
Hikaru avoided that with a 10-foot bull. He's like, I'm moving out of there.
But king takes g5 is not a threat, because rook g8 check, the king has to go to the side of the board. It's uncomfortable.
Magnus recognizes it. Rook e2 check opens up an attack on the knight, but the king slides into d4. Here comes Hikaru's pawn. We've got a good old-school pawn race. 20 seconds on the clock for Magnus.
King d4 is finally king takes g5 looks good for white. Probably have to take that at some point, but Magnus, by the way, down to 18 seconds.
Yeah, this is a 3-result game. I know it sounds crazy, but Hikaru is known to create crazy chances in these positions. And there's a case in point. Rook e4 is the threat. You gotta move the knight. And he does.
King g5, knight takes f3 is check, the knight goes to d2.
Uh-oh, intercepting the rook and stopping rook e4 check. Still a draw, but Hikaru's gotta be careful.
a5 is falling. Maybe throw rook a6 first, but you take probably h4, h5.
The other pawn.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I think Magnus has to be careful here. That pawn moves really fast, and c3 is restrained by the bishop.
Rook f1 check first, and he wants rook h1 at some point, but he's just making a draw here.
I think it's time to make a draw. With 9 seconds on the clock, no need for Magnus